Do Black Lives matter to the Black Lives Matter organization, or is it all rhetorical bark with no authentic bite? That is to say, do they really want to help black people, or are they only out for themselves?
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
Indeed, no justice, no peace. It's a true enough statement, true in a society, and certainly true at home. But how does this statement square when you compare the words of BLM with the actions of Black Lives Matter? Can they say that they care when they choose to deify a fallen drug dealer instead of lifting up a man who was murdered defending his business and community, ironically during a riot organized by Black Lives Matter Incorporated? How many black families have been adversely impacted by Black Lives Matter activity?
They want to hold police accountable. Their message, however, has taken a violent tone here, and we don't hear the mention of George Floyd's name at all.
Some people are laughing, some people are videotaping.
They just threw something on fire, Chris, a firecracker.
Yep.
Protests started at about noon today in Seattle, but turned destructive right around 4 p.m. when someone lit a Seattle police cruiser on fire. Since then, we have seen widespread looting and destruction downtown.
The 3rd precinct of the Minneapolis Police Department on fire. Nearby businesses ablaze. This is how the night of May 28th unfolded.
During days of violent protests, rioters also burned down this 7-Eleven near 17th and Pine Street, leaving dozens out of a job and a vacant plot of land now for sale.
Just step back from what you're doing. Know the real reason that you're protesting. Let's do it in a positive manner. We don't have to go out and loot and do all the other things.
You know, Dave was a black man, and all Black Lives Matter. All of them. It doesn't matter who kills them. And until we get that agenda that every single life on this planet matters, and there's more respect for each other, we can get along. You know, just love one another.
Cook County's chief medical examiner on the report released by her office with some very alarming statistics. 1,009 homicides to date, which is the highest in 27 years. 156 children or teenaged victims. 96% of the victims African American or Latino, and a 40% increase in homicides since 2019.
Our numbers are always more than both New York and Los Angeles put together. And to see that number increase even more is very concerning.
Everybody was all in Illinois to deal with COVID, but when it comes to the violence, it's all of a sudden it's just not even being spoken about hardly.
Even though more than 90% of the homicides were shootings, Father Michael Flager says that gun violence remains a back burner issue in Chicago.
If I had an African American or Hispanic son right now, 9, 10, 11 years old, I would get him out of the city. If I couldn't afford to move, I'd send him somewhere. It's a killing field out here.
And why does Black Lives Matter remain ever silent on the epidemic of mass murders stemming from black-on-black crime in cities like Baltimore, Kansas City, New York, Detroit, Houston, Miami, LA, and even Jacksonville, Florida, to name just a few? Perhaps their silence is intentional based on their ideology. And for that, we turn to the Black Lives Matter manifesto. There's no justice in it, and there's certainly no peace, but there is definitely an agenda. Family on Trial is your source for insights and information that's going to protect you and your family. So do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share, and join us over at familyontrial.org where the conversation continues. You guys are awesome. Hey fam, I'm in the studio with Rich Dakers, one of my good friends. We're going to chop it up real quick. BLM and the family, and specifically BLM and the black family, although they are trying to undermine any family that they can and often do. Hey Rich, how you doing, man?
Good. How's it going?
I'm good. I have no complaints, man. Tell us a little about yourself.
So yeah, my name is Rich Dakers. Born in Kingston, Jamaica. Live here in West Palm Beach, and I'm a underground utility and excavation contractor in the area.
Sweet. Husband, father.
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, husband, father, entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Man of mystery over here, y'all. That's gonna be a good one. Hey, Rich, I can go ahead and tell you this, man. hopefully you don't mind, because this is gonna set a few people on fire.
Okay.
It's gonna set a few people on fire, but I think there's something people need to hear. I'm pretty sure you do as well. We are both strong believers in the family unit.
Absolutely.
And what happens in the family happens in society. You know, so we build a strong foundation at home. We can have a strong foundation nationally.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to lead in with this real quick. I was looking at some stats that I found very, very disturbing, and it's this, and these are numbers from 2019 because they're the most complete numbers that I could find. In 2019, there were 2,906 black people murdered in this country. Almost 3,000, okay? 88.6%, or 2,574 of those murders were committed by other black people. 88.6. Now fast forward to 2021, and we don't have nationwide numbers, but I was able to pull up a few numbers from particular cities. 2021, Chicago area, Cook County, so that includes Chicago, there were 960 black and Latino murders.
It's a blue state?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it is. And in Philadelphia, they set a record at 521 murders by the end of 2021. These two cities alone.
Blue state again? Philadelphia?
Yeah. These two cities alone accounted for 50% of all murdered black people in 2021. 50%. These two cities alone. And both of these cities individually beat LA and New York combined.
Those are war zones.
Genocide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Genocide.
Absolutely.
So let's get into Black Lives Matter. I'm gonna let that marinate for a minute. We'll come back to those stats because there's more to unpack with these particular statistics.
I think I can help dig into that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's an agenda. It's flagrant, it's demonic, it's afoot. They're all over the place now. And let me preface this conversation with this point. I do not believe, nor do I condone police brutality.
Not at all.
I do not condone lawlessness. I do not condone murder.
Not at all.
So from the start, because there will be folks who will see this and they'll go, oh, he's a police apologist and he's all about the white man and want to apologize for him. No, it's not. I don't care if you're white or you're black. Murder is murder, and you ought to be dealt with. With that said, because in case the folks who are watching this don't know, I am a police officer currently, over 20 years on, and I know that there are situations. I know how I would respond, and I know how I would respond because I've been in some of those situations where I've had to what we colloquially call clear leather, which means draw your weapon because somebody's doing something that they should not be doing hardcore. Okay, so I'm not here to apologize for murder, but I do want to speak to accountability.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with holding people accountable. I'm fine with holding police officers accountable for lawless actions because the police can break the law, and they sometimes do. I will not subscribe to that every officer you run into is somehow some degenerate demon who's out to just murder all the black males that they can. I'm not going to subscribe to that because the stats don't bear that out. And we let in with some stats just now that would suggest that we might be focused on the wrong problem if there's a problem to be focused on. Black Lives Matter.
Real quick.
Yeah, man.
Just to give the audience a background, like, you know, and Daryl is a police officer, and I am somebody who has been incarcerated, been in trouble, so I've been down that road. That place where he's talking about, I've been there. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know, by God's good graces, you know, you're here, I'm here, we sitting across from each other having a conversation because we all have our histories, we all have our experiences, and we are both at a stage in our lives where we have to take what we've experienced and what we've learned and apply it in a way that is positive for the community. There's no wisdom without the positive application of knowledge.
Absolutely.
And if we seek to be wise, then we've got to apply in a positive manner the things that we have learned. So here we are. That's absolutely fine. We have a group of people who seek the destruction of the Black family. And at one point, they stated this out loud. They created this manifesto. It's titled What We Believe. They made the mistake. They made several mistakes. But one of those mistakes was they posted it on the internet and then tried to delete it when people started calling them out on it. And the thing about the internet is stuff don't go away. I don't care how you try to erase it. There are folks who on the daily, their whole mission is to copy everything on the internet
as fast as it comes
as fast as it comes out, and call it the Wayback Machine. And I went into the Wayback Machine. I found this, and it's no doubt was posted on their website because it was cited in several news articles that have not been removed from the internet.
Now, I've never seen this, so you're gonna break this down to me?
Oh yes, yeah. Well, we'll go over it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go over it, and we'll discuss some of the finer points.
Okay.
Some of the finer points of it, and by finer, I'm being tongue in cheek because there's nothing fine about this. It's fine in its deviousness, and how they subtly try to make you believe. And subtle in the true sense of the word subtle, the biblical sense of the word subtle is in the serpent sense. The serpent in the garden was the subtlest of all creatures. That Hebrew word I cannot recall right now, just translated really into English as the wisest, because it was slick, it was manipulative. And that's what I mean by subtle when I'm referring to this manifesto. They're being slick, they're being manipulative, they're trying to couch this destructive language in terms that where people will embrace what their agenda is, not fully knowing that they're getting ready to take a bite of the apple. And so many people have. So let me go into this, and then we can drive the discussion from there. Now, I'm not going to read the entire manifesto. It's several pages long, but I do
just the hot spots.
Yeah, I'm going to hit the highlights, and anyone who wants to read the manifesto in its entirety to make sure that I am presenting this with integrity. Check the links in the description, and it will be there for you to see. Okay, so I'm going to start here in this manifesto. This is from the Black Lives Matter Global Network. They kind of evolved into a global network shortly after the passing of George Floyd The Black Lives Matter was around shortly after Trayvon Martin.
They started with a hashtag, right?
It started with, Black Lives Matter started with a hashtag right after Trayvon Martin. Okay. And then it evolved to the Black Lives Matter Global Network with the passing of George Floyd. Part of this manifesto is every day we recommit to healing ourselves and each other, to co-creating alongside comrades, very communist language. We don't call ourselves comrades here in the West, but comrades, allies, and family, a culture where each person feels seen, heard, and supported. We acknowledge and celebrate the differences and commonalities. Now, one thing for sure, if you ever got into an argument with anybody who supports Black Lives Matter, the last thing on their mind is celebrating your differences. They might be wanting to celebrate other people's differences. They definitely want to celebrate your differing point of view. Right. You are now marked.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have that label here. It's the height of hypocrisy. So we work vigorously for freedom and justice for Black people, and by extension, all people. And we'll get a little bit more deep into that, because freedom and justice does not involve burning out other people's businesses, especially when they're Black.
Absolutely. Not just that, but businesses that are giving Black people opportunities.
Yeah. And see, we are unapologetically Black in our positioning. To love and desire freedom and justice for ourselves is a prerequisite for wanting the same for others. Now, I'm unapologetic about what the Master taught. Now, this has nothing to do with Christ our Lord. This has nothing to do with biblical principles, because what you're espousing here with to love and desire freedom and justice for ourselves is you are espousing self-love.
Yeah.
And I've been taught that there's no greater love than this, and a man is willing to lay down his life for his friends. They're telling me in this manifesto that I'm supposed to love and desire freedom and justice for myself.
And not for the family, and not for all.
No.
Yeah.
No, and you'll find that as we go along, there'll be many references to family, but their style.
Yeah.
Family.
And a lot of this, I'm gonna be listening. I'm just listening to what, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because you're into this. So
yeah.
You can break it down to me a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like just for some background, during Black Lives Matter and during that whole build up, I was trying to build myself up. I was trying to work and focus on building a career, man. I was in college. I was going through that kind of stuff. So I really, not saying I wasn't paying attention to, I just didn't let it affect me the way that other people let it affect them. Because I was focused on trying to build something for my family.
And in that you did, that just might have been the covering of the Spirit.
Yeah, always.
On your behalf.
Always.
Because sometimes you have to be, so sometimes you can see, and if you don't necessarily feel, it's because you're not supposed to.
Yeah. It's sort of like the people who looked up during the Great Depression and said, what Great Depression?
I've been reading so many stories about people who were in the Great Depression that came together as a community.
Absolutely.
And went, nah, we don't plan on suffering.
They found all the people who was willing to work.
Yeah.
Put it together.
Yeah.
And make it happen.
Absolutely.
They didn't cry and moan and wait. They made it happen.
Man.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So,
Black Lives Matter.
They didn't choose victimhood.
Yeah, not at all.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
They chose not to be victims.
One of the biggest problems I see in the urban community, right, is the victim mentality.
Yeah.
Right? The why me? mentality is something that even for me, I had to shake. I had to learn how to get away from that. I had to say, hold on, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I rode around for years. I grew up right here in the fine state of Florida. In the part of the third of the state that could be considered the South. So I grew up with that kind of a black male mentality of what it means to grow up in the South and what the South represented, and developing an animosity against the people I didn't even know. Because victimhood was preached. But once again, being covered and by the grace of God, I didn't allow that to deter me from wanting more and doing more and knowing, hey, regardless of what people had out for me, I need to focus on what God has for me. You know, and then you turn away from, oh, woe is me, to I got this because I'm held. And ironically, because Black Lives Matter, and we'll get into this a little bit more, they cling to Marxist ideology. You got to get rid of God, and you got to get rid of family in any meaningful sense. So
Black Lives Matter was formed by all women, right?
So there's a little bit of debate with that, because I cannot recall the gentleman's name at this point. I'm gonna have to do some research, because at one point I could find this YouTube video very readily, and now I can't. But it was a guy and a girl. It was a black guy and a black girl, and I recall his video because he put it out, and he was basically saying, hey, this is not what Black Lives Matter was supposed to be about.
And he said that there was a group called Black Lives or something like that.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
A guy with a beard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and so and so there's some debate. But right now, when you do some research on BLM, especially the global network, when you go on places like Wikipedia, which, I mean, you know, grain of salt there, they credit Patrisse Cullors and two other women with founding Black Lives Matter and leading the global movement. So yeah, so that they're supposed to be the ones who.
What does Black Lives Matter do? What?
According to them, they're a social justice network, a global social justice network to advance the justice and or non-justice in their mindset, to advance the awareness of non-justice in the black community worldwide, and to advance the necessity for peace, justice, prosperity, and just overall well-being of black folks worldwide. Of course, their eye specifically on the U.S.,
of course,
but also in solidarity with their black brothers and sisters worldwide. So wherever there's an issue that's affecting black people, that's, they're going to be there. Except,
so they're financially, like, how do they? Are they like?
Financially, they ask for donations so they can advance, so they can continue to do the work necessary. And this is their estimation, so they can do the work necessary to go out and influence legislation, and make sure that things are happening in the Black community that's just going to be the best for the Black community. Like defund the police, and I'm not afraid to say it's got to be one of the most insane things I've ever seen in my life.
100%.
Yeah.
What? For you to defund the police and take them out of a community that, and some of these communities hardly even have officers in them, all right? I've been around people who are murderers, right? That deserve to be in prison, right? And these individuals are walking around these communities, right? So imagine no officers around in these same communities with these kind of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much I can get into with that part.
Yeah.
So for me, right? So coming to America, I came here from a different country. So my family never experienced slavery in America, right? I come from a multiracial family. Some of my family members are white. Some of my family members are Black, Indian, Hindu. And when I say my family members, I'm talking about like my grandmother's father, my grandfather's mother, like right there. You know what I mean? Some of them are African from the Maroon tribe, but we all came to America from Jamaica, right? So I never experienced what, you know, I couldn't, every time somebody asks me about racism in America and slavery and things like that, I'm like, well, it's hard for me to speak on that topic because my family never really experienced it here.
Yeah.
Right? But being here, have I noticed that in certain communities, now that I'm older, I look back on certain things, and you know, when my family first came to America, we moved to Queens and we were in a urban environment, right? So we're around a lot of Blacks, Hispanics, things like that. We're in that kind of community. But I noticed that, and this is going, and I'm going to get back to the defund the police thing, because it's like growing up in those communities, they were jungles, right? So we had to survive. My father wasn't here yet. He was still left behind in Jamaica. He had to come here, you know, other means. He had to go to Canada, all kind of stuff before he can get to me, right? So it was just my mom with 2 kids in the US trying to figure out a way for us to make it. So of course she got on public assistance. She moved into the projects, and that's where we had to live, right? So going outside, going to school, you know, it was a very dog-eat-dog environment. And growing up in the late 80s, 90s, you're coming out of the crack era, right? And you're going into the violence era, where it wasn't even drugs anymore. It was just a bunch of people with guns, right? Just doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So when you're in that type of community, you have to survive, right? So you may end up, you know, doing stuff that you may not normally do, right? But with that comes the police officers. With that comes the people who are supposed to police that, right? I remember when they passed a law in New York saying the stop and frisk law.
Yeah, very controversial. Yeah, I remember that.
For me at that time, being somebody who's in the streets, I'm thinking in my head, man, 9 out of 10 times I probably got something wrong on me anyway. So I wouldn't want that law to pass.
Yeah.
Right? I would want to be the bad guy in my community still if the cops couldn't stop me and frisk me and find a weapon on me, where 9 out of 10 times somebody on this corner has a weapon on them. Right? These officers know what's going on. They're in these communities. Right? They're out there full shifts, double shifts, triple shifts. So they know who they're dealing with. So when it comes to defunding the police and taking out some of the only protection we have somewhat in our community, you know what I mean? That's tough. I feel like there are officers in that community that care. Right? I know for a fact there's officers that care in that community because I grew up with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I grew up with narcotics officers. Any kind of officer you can name, I've met at least one officer that cared. They weren't out there just to be like, nah, they was out there on my ass because they knew that I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And some of them was willing to at least have conversations with me.